Hello again, Scott Johnson, Dad on Rails, and the topic of this session is, let's call it IRB versus Rails Console, Repl-driven development. All right, and this episode is dedicated to Jared Haworth, an old friend of mine who used to be my pairing program partner on Rails for about 7 years. And Jared taught me the Zen experience that is the Repl. And he used to beat this into me until I internalized it, and now I find I can't approach a programming language without a Repl. It's given me hell learning Rust. Anyway, I mean, the Rust playground is kind of Repl-like, but it's not. But it is, but it's not. Okay. So let's start with a basic concept. What does Repl mean? Repl means read, evaluate, print, loop. Okay? So this is an old school computer science construct that dates back literally to the dawn of time, specifically what was referred to as Lisp. Okay? So, and I am not a Lisp guy, but I recognize that so much good stuff in computers comes out of that intellectual heritage. So thank you, Marvin Minsky. Thank you, actually, is it Marvin or is it John out of, I can't remember. Anyway, thank you, people far smarter than I am. All right, so the idea of a Repl, or read, evaluate, print loop, is that you are sitting in a console and you have access to your underlying language and you can simply write expressions into it and figure out how to write your code by actually writing code and not writing it in an editor, writing it in a console, and then you might copy and paste different things into your editor. Okay? Now, it's a very experimental way of programming. So when you have Ruby installed on a system, any system, you can always, as long as it's in your path, type the phrase IRB and press enter. And when you do that, it will go, and all of a sudden you'll get like a prompt on screen, and you are in Ruby land. So if you type PUTS space quote hello quote and then press enter, it will put out the string hello to the screen. That is your first line in a Repl. Okay? And I really should have made it puts space quote hello space world quote enter. And congratulations that you have just typed something into a Repl and you have put that on screen. Okay. Now, IRB stands for Interactive Ruby. Okay, or that's what I think it stands for. And let's say you are in your Rails directory, and you've got your application, and remember we always said we had a product table, and you type IRB and press enter. And you then type capital P product.all and you press enter, and what you get back is a big damn error. And you say to yourself, well, golly, I know I've got a product class, where'd it go? Yes, we're at that level of my wanting to amuse myself, where I make funny character voices. Well, it didn't go anywhere. It was never present in the first place. IRB is stock Ruby. Okay, so in other words, you only have the elements in IRB that you have in your Ruby installation. Okay. So you basically have a fairly lightweight programming language without any additional classes that represent the stuff in your application, and without any of the quote-unquote gems that enhance your application. Okay? Can you get access to gems? Absolutely. And the way you get access to gems is you do you use what's called a require statement. So let's say that you have the gem installed in your system named AwesomePrint. And there is literally a gem called AWESOME_print. And what AwesomePrint does is it does a really nice job of printing out native Ruby data structures. So if you've got a hash and you do awesome print on a hash, it shows you the curly braces and makes it look pretty. Okay, so you could say require space quote awesome print, and then awesome print will come in, and then you could do an awesome print on an object and it would show it to you. But you probably actually don't want to do this, because IRB is one of those things that you only use when you deliberately need native Ruby. So you'll use it a lot when you're doing Ruby work without Rails, and yes, that's actually a thing. You don't see it a lot, but Ruby is an excellent language even outside of Rails. All right. In reality, what you normally do is you use what's called Rails Console. And the way you get this is you go into your Rails application directory and you type Rails space C. This is why I call this IRB versus Rails Console. And now it comes up, and it's still going to look like IRB, but you can type in capital P product.all, and well, golly, there's my products. Okay. And to anyone that I offend with my funny voices, I don't mean anything by it. They're just a voice. It's just really there to amuse myself. Okay. So the thing to understand about Rails Console is Rails Console is deliberately designed to load the entire Rails environment into memory. Okay? And so everything in config gets loaded, everything in initializers gets loaded, all of your classes are available to you, and all of your gems are available to you. And one of the interesting things here is that this is a great way to find syntax errors in your Rails application that don't rely on actually code being executed. So for example, if you have a syntax error in a rake task, just running Rails Console will not, oh look, I'm going 70 miles an hour. Thank you, Mr. Speed Sign. Will not find them because that code is not being executed on load time. But it will find things at the setup level of your Rails things, and it will find syntax errors in the code it does automatically load, which are things like all the classes within models. Okay. If you want Rails Console to find everything, try running it as, in other words, using it as what's called a linter. Do Rails _env equal production, and then space Rails space console, Rails space C. Okay. So what can you do inside Rails Console? The answer is, you can do anything you can do with Ruby and all of your application. And this is really useful. Okay? Because you have your entire Rails application loaded, and certain things that aren't designed to be used in the console layer, you might have to call a special way, but you can still call it. And the canonical example that comes up is, for example, things that reside in a view helper. You have to use a special syntax to call them, and I can't remember what the heck it is. Like, I look it up every time, right? I no longer, I'm too old to memorize syntax. I am a 52-year-old programmer. If I haven't internalized it by now, I'm probably going to have to look it up. And there's no shame in that, right? Like, this is why we have Google. This is why we have Stack Overflow. Okay, and it's one of the worst aspects of interviewing for a programming job is everyone always seems to expect you to memorize everything and know everything on top of your head. And I'm sorry, I do not do that anymore. I am too old for that stupid trick. All right, lane ends, merge right. Quick, can I get ahead of? Can I do this? Can I get faster than somebody else? Yes, I can. And my lane is not actually merging. I record these podcasts while I'm driving my Mustang, which is one of the few indulgences in my life. But oh God, is it nice to have a nice car. The reason why there were no videos made yesterday on the downward leg of this journey instead of the upward leg was because I had the top down. And in the wake of the COVID crisis, the ability to drive a fast car with the top down, oh, It is such a good feeling. Okay, back to Repls. Repls let you interactively figure out how you're doing stuff in your application. If you don't know how to write an active record where clause, go into Rails Console and write it. See that the data comes back as what you think it should be. Okay? And then you take that line and you copy it and then you paste it into your editor. And do not feel like an amateur or a cheat for doing this. Real people do this. I have written whole large chunks of Rails applications in nothing but the console. Okay? And so now let's talk about the other reason why you use the console. Well, dear listener, I am going to tell you something about writing applications. You are going to screw it up. And I say this with all the love in my heart. You're going to screw it up because you're human, you are fallible, and we all screw shit up. Okay? And the way you get around this is often, like, it would be great to get everything perfectly done, but in reality, you're going to make mistakes because the pace of application development is fast. It's hard to get things right. And so you have incentives on you that make you screw it up. And then what you do is you fix it. And one of the tools you use for fixing it, particularly when you've got a data mistake on production, is you use a tool like a console. Okay? So let's say, for example, that you needed to add a prefix to every product in your database. Okay? So you wanted to add the company's name as a prefix. And you didn't think to do this when the data went into the system. Now your boss is yelling at you, you're missing the prefix. What do you do? Okay. So you could do this in 4 or 5 lines in your console. Products equal capital P product.all. Next line in your console. Products.each do pipe product pipe. Enter. Next line. Product.name equals quote company name space number curly product.name quote. Enter. Okay. Product.save. Enter. End. What you just did was you wrote a loop. You found all the products, and you bound them to the variable products. Products.each do pipe product gives you a loop construct where every time you loop over the product, you have an individual product instance called product. And you said product.name equal quote whatever the prefix is space number curly product.name quote or product.name equal the prefix, whatever it is, presumably it's in a variable already, space number curly product.name curly quote. Enter. Product.save. Enter. End. Okay? That product.name equals, basically what you're doing is you're saying, for my name attribute, I am going to, for my name attribute, I'm going to make it equal to the string that consists of the embedded prefix, and then I'm going to interpolate into the string the value contained within number curly, close curly, which is going to be product.name. And that's going to inject that in. Okay, and then you call a product.save on the next line. All right. Now, you can do this in Rails Console, and that's great, and that's the way you test it. And then, quite honestly, what you do is you write a rake task, and you run this as a rake task. And the reason you do this with a rake task is a rake task gives you an audit trail. Because that rake task has to be written, it has to be added to your Git repo, it has to be committed, it has to be deployed, and then it has to be executed on the server. And one of the things that you're going to want to do when you maintain systems is have the concept of an audit trail, right? Because otherwise what happens is people change stuff willy-nilly, and it's very hard to understand what's going on. Now, when you're a one-man band, and you're the only person who touches your systems, you don't want to have an audit trail? Go for it, cowboy. I have been that cowboy. And what I can tell you is that even you will want an audit trail at some point, okay? The other thing that you'll find is those rake tasks that you use to do what you think are one-off changes to your database, they are not one-off changes. They are changes that you will do again and again, or you will take them and you will use them as the branching point for the next time you have to do a batch change, okay? This topic, REPL-based development, is so rich and so deep. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there is a website on the internet called repl.it, or Repl.it, which does nothing but give you REPLs for different languages easily. And they make money by selling programming tools, right? Like they sell this concept as a programming tool for N different languages, okay? So, like, this is a real thing. It is entirely a way to do development. And what I can tell you is that I personally resisted this for years, and then Jared Haworth, bless his pea-picking heart. Hi, my wife. You taught me that phrase. Jared beat me over the. Jared knew this was a good thing, and he beat me over the head until I did it, until I internalized it. And now I go to a language, if it doesn't have a REPL, I'm just like going, what do? I have to write code and compile it? Oh my heavens, where's my REPL? Quick, give me a REPL. Yeah, I amuse myself. All right, REPLs, they are things. You have IRB, which gives you the native Ruby stuff, and if you don't know, then you have Rails C. And there are times in the world when it is hard to know what is Rails and what is Ruby, and the answer is if you don't know what it is, because Rails very seamlessly extends Ruby, and a lot of the really good stuff in Ruby in that you think is Ruby is actually Rails, and if that's the case, go into IRB and try it. And if it doesn't work, that means it's actually Rails. And if you can't figure out where it might come from, look in the library active support. Okay, most of the really, really good stuff in Rails, it comes from active support. Shh, I didn't tell you that. All right, thank you very much.